CWPA Remote.
Hi, I'm Ed Hawes, Director of Communications for the Collegiate Polo Association, and this is CWPA Remote. Joining me today is the newest member of the Club Governance Council and founder of the LSU Louisiana State Club Team, and currently the Clinical Data and Administrative Specialist for the Psychological Health and Performance Team at the University of Colorado, Chris Thomas. Okay, now I'm out of breath. That's a lot to say in one sentence.
It's a very long title.
Well, thanks for joining us today. To start off, I want to talk a little bit about how'd you get into water polo. Obviously, originally from Bradenton, Florida, went to high school in Kingwood, Texas, and then you end up at LSU and founded the club water polo team at LSU. So I want to talk a little bit about how'd you get into water polo, and then, what the experience was like founding the team, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I started my water polo career around my sophomore year of college at LSU. In high school, I played football and I swam. And I figured when I got to college, I might as well just combine the two sports and play water polo. One of my good friends from high school was an incoming freshman the next year and wanted to start the water polo team and been in contact with another current LSU student. So I got in contact with him and the three of us sat down, met with the student activities people at LSU to kind of figure out what those steps would look like. The biggest issue for us was securing pool space. Mm-hmm. The pool at LSU back then was about 3 feet deep, maybe 4 feet at the deepest, and about 20 yards. So we knew we needed a bigger space. So we actually worked with the athletic department there at LSU to secure the natatorium. And then it was just a process of trying to recruit kids. Fortunately, we had a lot of kids actually from Texas at LSU, and Texas swimming is pretty big. So we had a lot of swimmers that had never played water polo before. So it was kind of a fun process of trying to teach them that new sport while I was also trying to learn the sport. We had a local media member in the area that had played water polo his entire life that agreed to be one of our coaches. And from there, we just kept trying to, get it on campus, trying to get the word out that we had a water polo team. It was a rough couple of years. I graduated in 2011, not sure if the team was going to stick together after I left or not, but fortunately the people that were there, all the students after me have done a really good job of keeping the team together. And they've went from being just a student organization to a full club sport team. So I've been really proud of the work that my friends and I had put in to start the club, and then the work that all those officers in the meantime have done to keep it up and running. So it's nice when you can go to a university, especially a big one like LSU, and here I am 9 years later after I graduated looking back saying, I still made an impact on that school because here's that team and it's still alive well. So it's a great feeling every day to look back at that and know that, I was able to make a difference there.
Obviously, you hold a unique position. You were the founder of the club team. A lot of clubs, the founding members might be 20, 30 years back, and the club has just kind of existed. You had to go through that process of contacting the administration to get everything set up. Obviously, recruiting members on campus to get them out there, and in addition to that, also teaching the sport while you were learning the sport as well. What advice would you offer to someone who's in the position you were at LSU, where they're starting a club team? Maybe they're going to a school that doesn't have a water polo club team. They're looking to start one. What advice would you offer them in that situation to kind of start that process, and then kind of the tips and tricks, and what did you not know when you started that you wish you had known when you started down that road?
Yeah, that's a good question there. There's a lot of learning curves that we had to overcome. At LSU, we had like a 2-year probationary period where we weren't actually allowed to be an official club team. We had to prove that we could sustain not just membership, but also the biggest thing for us was finances. So the hardest thing for us was convincing kids to sign up for this club team, knowing that it might be 2-3 years down the road when we can actually start competing at a club level. So to have them pay for dues, because we did have to pay to use the pool, was tough to do. And it's really hard to convince kids to, especially nowadays, to look that far in advance. We're very much in a instant gratification kind of culture right now. So for us, it was really tough, but it was just that promise of, hey, things are going to get better. Like, we need to practice. We need to actually learn this sport. So that's what these next 2 years are really going to be. And then especially for the incoming freshmen and the sophomores we're recruiting, for us, we're like, hey, by your junior, senior year, you're going to have opportunities that we won't have because we're going to be graduated. We're going to be done with the team. So you've got to put in the work in now. So that was probably the hardest part, was just getting that buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
But for starting the actual team, it's really good to be at universities that have a good relationship between their recreation department and student affairs. And coming from that world, I've been working in recreation every year prior to this year now. So I know that building that relationship from the administrative side is very important. And I feel like as campus recreation has really evolved across the country, those relationships have been getting a lot stronger. So having a good relationship with both the club sport people at your school and then also the student affairs, because a lot of the times the way that funding's tied in, sometimes you get it straight from the rec center, sometimes you get it from student affairs, and sometimes it's a mixed model. So really understanding what all the different resources your universities can offer. And a lot of universities are now offering kind of like mini scholarships for athletes, for club athletes, or for student organization members that, come from maybe lower socioeconomic status levels where they can't afford whatever those dues are. So a lot of schools are starting to set aside some money every year for that. So being on the lookout for that, and then also for new clubs, some schools have money set aside for that as well. So just really asking a lot of questions and figuring out what resources your university can offer and really utilizing a lot of those. And then for us, we also just formed relationships with other water polo teams in the area. So I think Tulane at the time was the only other club water polo team in the area for us. So we worked a lot with them. We did a lot of scrimmages there, which was nice because, sometimes it's fun just to go around and practice and scrimmage against your own guys, but being able to actually go travel, it doesn't hurt that Tulane's also in New Orleans. So it's, you never really need an excuse to go to New Orleans.
Yeah.
So for our team, it was kind of a good weekend trip of like, we'll go to New Orleans, we'll play Tulane a couple times during the weekend, and then we'll just, hang out in the city. So utilizing, if you're, in an area where there's a couple other club teams around, even if it's just in your state and you're in a state where there might be a lot of space in between those teams, just working around with them and having them kind of, help out if you can attend their practices, do scrimmages, or just to have, like a sounding board for, hey, we're trying to do these drills or go through these practice routines. What do you guys think, or what do y'all do? Because for the most part, not a lot of club teams are going to say, no, we're not going to tell you how we're going to practice. Like a lot of the club teams that we've encountered are usually pretty understanding that we're trying to get the club team started. And they know that having more club teams in the area means more competitions and, more fun for them and for their members.
Well, you come out of LSU, you go to grad school, you go to Bowling Green, and show up at Bowling Green, and you're like, hey, I'm going to coach a club team while I'm here too. So you really didn't get away from the sport. You just transitioned to a different state, but you're still involved in the sport. Go from there, and then as you mentioned, you got into recreation. Been at internships at Lafayette, Ithaca, Cornell. Then, and correct me if I'm wrong here, then to Penn, then to Stanford, and now to Colorado.
Yeah, I moved around a lot. It's the beautiful thing about being in higher education is there's schools in every state. So the internships were great experiences for me to just to get a lot of knowledge and background in campus recreation, and primarily focusing in intramurals and club sports, because being a club athlete in college, I saw the benefit that club sports offered, and intramurals is kind of a little step down from that in terms of commitment level. So for me, working in those fields was a great way to give back to not just the sport that gave me a lot during my undergraduate experience, but to provide other opportunities for students that may have played in a sport their entire life in high school, and then they get to college and they're not good enough to be varsity. So giving them those options, or for people like myself who never played water polo before and figured, well, I've been in the water and I've played football, so let's combine the two sports and, see what happens. So it's been a lot of great experiences there. And Bowling Green, it was a lot of fun. I didn't fully make all of my decisions in grad school based off of if they had a water polo team or not, but when it came down to my final schools, BG, one of the big reasons I had a club team and I was able to be a coach and also play with them a little bit too. So it was a lot of fun, and and then being in campus recreation has just been, like I said, a great way to kind of give back to that community, and now being a member of the CWPA and on the governance committee. It's just another way to give back to the sport that's given me so much.
All right. I'll ask the tough question. Of all the places you've been, what's been your favorite place?
Oh, that's a good question. I did love living in Philly. I grew up an Eagles fan, and unfortunately, I moved the year before they won the Super Bowl, so I didn't get to be in the city and celebrate that victory. But I love
It was
just the
fun.
vibe of.
I'll say it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, that's what all my friends were sending me pictures and snaps of, and I was very jealous that I wasn't there. But I also joke that if that's what it took for the Eagles to finally win a Super Bowl, is me moving away from Philly, I knew I had to take that sacrifice. So, but yeah, Philly's been a lot of fun. I'm living in Colorado right now. COVID's kind of put a little bit of a damper on being able to go
Mhm.
out and do a lot of the outdoorsy stuff that I wanted to do when I first moved here. But I know in the next year or two, once things hopefully clear up a bit, that Colorado will probably surpass Philly as my favorite place to live. But yeah, just the vibe in Philly. I had a great roommate and great situation there, and it was just a very fun city to live in. So I definitely enjoyed the little bit over 2 years I was there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you're in campus recreation, or have been, and now, you know, what advice would you offer someone who's currently a club athlete or just in general has an interest in getting into recreation? You know, what advice would you give them to start their process and to go down that road and to get into the field?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the good thing about campus recreation is we do have a national governing body. It's the National Intramural Recreation Sport Association, or NERSA for short. They put together conferences every year. They typically have a big national conference once a year. That's a great place to go to network. There's a lot of great workshops too, but for a younger professional, that's how I found my grad assistantship and my job at UPenn, was by going to the national conference, because most schools will go there looking for graduate assistants. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the big way to get into campus recreation if you're a student, is to get a graduate assistantship. Um, Most of the time, they'll cover most, if not all, of your tuition, give you a small stipend on top of that. And then you can specialize just in intramurals if you want to do intramurals and clubs, aquatics, facilities, a variety of different options there. But yeah, I'd say probably 90-95% of the interviews take place at those conferences. So getting involved there. They also do have scholarships for students too. So if the travel to the conference or the actual registration to the conference is a barrier, they do offer a lot of scholarships for students as well. And for those club athletes or anyone that's interested in getting involved that may not be already involved with the rec center, that's always a good place to go, is to the club sport director or just a recreation employee, a full-time staff member, and ask like, hey, I want to get involved with NERSA. That's all you'll need to say, and most of the time they'll be able to directly help you out, because like I said, most schools are NERSA members, so they've got connections all across the country. The NERSA network's amazing. I can go to a conference and see friends from across the country that I've worked with, and then every time I have new coworkers, it's just adding to that network. When we go to conferences, it's, oh, hey, here's Chris, he worked at this school, and you just kind of build that network from there. So for the most part, most NERSA people, they know someone in almost every single state or every single region. So if you're really wanting to stay on the East Coast or go see something new, it's just a great opportunity to kind of to get involved and in my experience, see most of the country.
All right. Well, obviously, you got involved in the administration now of the league in terms of the Club Governance Council, which oversees the club play in the CWPA. Um, if you're a club player or a club coach or an administrator, what advice would you give them towards getting involved? Have you seen have you seen you know, the benefit for yourself for being involved in the process and in terms of the governance, both as you were an athlete, then a coach, and now as an administrator?
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, from the administrative side, I'm really excited. I have always enjoyed the rules. I'm also a high school official for a variety of sports, and being in intramurals, it's always about like rules and regulations. So for me, is an exciting way. I know kind of our philosophy is we want to get as many people involved as we can and grow the sport as much as possible. So looking at it from an administrative standpoint of what rules or policies are we enforcing, or are we going to adapt to really help grow the sport? Because we do see a lot of club programs are trying to grow. With COVID impacting a lot of the varsity programs, we're seeing some varsity programs get cut and then drop down to club. So we're hoping that helps grow our numbers as well. But yeah, it's just, like I said, it's another way to give back. It's another way to get involved. And for me, it's exciting to to sit in on this council and to kind of see like the ins and outs of, you know, how eligibility works and how like those processes and the appeal processes are going to work. And really for us, we want to be as transparent and open as possible. We'd much rather be proactive than reactive. So if you're a coach or a player and you've got questions on eligibility or any of the other rules that we're going to oversee, we want you to reach out to us to kind of build that communication, because I would much rather tell you before the season starts, hey, here's everything you need to do right, rather than halfway through the season sit down with the team and say, well, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, so these players aren't eligible, or you as a team aren't eligible. Because that's going to kind of go against our mission. We want as many people out there playing the sport that we all love as possible.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks for doing this for us. I appreciate it. And, you know, congratulations on being appointed to the Club Governance Council. And best wishes.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ed, and thanks for having me. This is a great opportunity, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.